Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. And right now, we are also continuing that to also discuss some tools that you can use to either maintain your peace or get your peace to begin with in this period of chaos that we are experiencing here on Earth right now. Today's guest is definitely able to help us with those tools. She is Carole Obley, and she has been the bridge between heaven and earth in more than 15,000 group and individual readings. She's the author of 3 books on spirit communication, spirituality, and healing. She's published articles on spiritual and metaphysical subjects and taught numerous workshops at Lilydale. And if you're a follower of this podcast, you know about Lilydale, but we'll get a little bit into Lilydale later in the discussion. She's been the subject of various newspaper articles and spoken on both radio and television. She holds a certificate in mediumship from Delphi University in Atlanta, Georgia, and has a mastership in Reiki healing. She's produced audio programs to help people with spiritual development, and she teaches 3 levels of classes in intuition and mediumship. Sounds like a great person that we should all get to know. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Carole, and then when she's done talking about her spiritual journey, we'll get into her book and some questions about Lilydale and other things that you might be interested in. Take it away, Carole.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my own journey, which is actually kind of long, probably like some of your listeners. I started out with organized religion. My parents were Protestant. I was constantly at church, in the Protestant church. That lasted for many years. And in my teen years, and this was really a catalyst in my on my pathway, I got into a lot of trouble in my teen years, specifically with alcohol and drugs. And it is, I speak very openly about that, and I've written about it in my books. By the way, there are a couple other books since that bio. There's a new one coming out next year. Called The Art of Sensing to help people with intuition development. When I got into trouble with drugs and alcohol, I was dying, basically, in a nutshell, at the age of 25. And so I went into recovery, and everything sprung from there. Those who are familiar with 12-step programs know that they're spiritually based programs. And the 12 steps are not religion, but they are spiritual in nature. So in order to save my own life, I needed to begin working those 12 steps in recovery. And that's exactly what I did for many, many years. Today, I have not drank alcohol in 41 years, so I don't even miss it. It's hard to believe that was even me. I've gone through tremendous, tremendous transformation by the grace of spirit. And I never claim credit for that. It is spirit working within and in my life. When I came out of doing to 12-step, which I went probably for about 18 years. I did speaking and discussion groups and so forth in AA and other 12-step groups. I knew I needed to get onto a pathway, but there was a lot of time in between there, um, after leaving that recovery pathway into coming on to the metaphysical or spiritual pathway. And initially, I went to a place that is no longer there in a little town near me, and the healing, hands-on healing, was very much emphasized at this metaphysical center. So I kind of became very immersed in studying and consuming as much material as I could. And I took about 3 years to get my Reiki mastership. And right away, I was drawn to the pathway of developing speaking mediumship. Healing is another form of mediumship. Certainly, evidentiary or mediumship contact with deceased loved ones is something that I've come to really be immersed in. And so I went to Delphi University, that is near Atlanta, Georgia. And I went there twice and became certified in mediumship. I've also taken many years of training at Lilydale. And I continue to take training even at this point. I mean, it's almost 30 years that I've been blessed to be on this pathway. And so I don't think, I don't want to rest on any laurels. I want to continually improve and sensitize myself to give the best that I can to clients in private sessions and also in group sessions. So, to that end, I continue to take online training every now and then, and as well as teaching others about mediumship, the Akashic Files, or also called the Akashic Records, the Book of Life. I believe Edgar Cayce called it God's Book of Remembrance. I've done a lot of work with reading the Akashic Files. Never wanted that, never asked for it. It started coming to me spontaneously. It just opened and unfolded in front of me many years ago. Then I began to write, and writing has taught me many lessons about patience, I can say, because anyone who has written a book, you know how much work it is. It's a tremendous amount of focus and work. And if I put my name on something, you can trust that every single word in that book I have personally written. So coming up on book release number 5, I'm extremely grateful that the books have helped people, and they've actually gone out internationally. So, that is my journey up to this point. That's a condensed or Reader's Digest version of the journey. But I always say, the more that I learn, the less I know. So that's probably a good thing, meaning intellectually knowing or rationally knowing. I am at a point now where I want to experience and feel spirit within every day without knowing it in my head. Because to me, the authentic spiritual journey, at least for me, is connecting with that wonderful, sacred, spiritual light within myself and reflecting that to other people through many, many, many sessions.
Yeah, that's a tall order for most of us to be able to maintain that state of having the sense of spirit within us on a consistent basis. It's not difficult to experience it every so often and say, boy, that was powerful, or boy, that's great, and I'm really in the flow, or I'm aligned. But so to be able to hold that and hold on to it and keep it flowing, that's another story. So it's a great goal to have, that's for sure.
I certainly am the first one to say I have in no way mastered that. I have no way
Okay.
mastered that. Um, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles and also some of Eckhart Tolle's material, especially in New Earth, finding your life's purpose. That book changed my life. It is the only book I have ever read in my life that I actually felt a shift in my crown center here at the top of my head, which um, is the energy center, or they're in Sanskrit, they're called a chakra, that resonates with the divine purpose and divine connection of the soul. When I was reading that book, Eckhart Tolle's book, I felt a shift in that crown center.
Yeah.
So um, it's pretty amazing. I know that some people, everyone has a different teacher that they resonate with, and that's fine because I'm not for everybody. Totally not for everybody. You have to go where you feel the material is valid and that it's resonating with you and that it's leading you on into discovering, importantly, this to me, this is the most important thing, discovering spirit within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Out there somewhere. And of
So
course, spirit is out there. Spirit is in everything, in every blade of grass, in every tree, in every animal, in you, in me. But importantly, to know that that magnitude and that eternity, which mediumship really, to me, proves the continuity of the soul, the eternity of the soul, to know that that is within you.
yeah. So beside New Earth, you mentioned A Course in Miracles. And I'm curious as to whether or not you tried to tackle that on your own or if you did it in a group.
I actually receive, and this is 3 years now, daily emails with each lesson. And there's some repetition in the lessons. I know that we know that there's 300 some days in a year, so there aren't that many lessons. Sometimes they have reviews of lessons, but every single day I get a reminder, an email with a lesson in it,
Uh-huh.
and some of them have become favorites for me to remind me
Yeah.
of spirit within.
Okay.
No, I did not. Well, I should say, yeah, I read some of it on my own. It's a very thick book, as you know, um, and you can
I've
read
got
it
it on the
probably.
shelf behind me here.
Oh, okay, you can probably read it 25 times, and you'll still not truly absorb the depth of that. It is a highly Neptunian text. Neptune meaning the God energy,
Yeah.
the cosmic energy. Um, but it took me a while because it is a total retraining of
Right.
your consciousness away from the rational mind into the infinite intelligence of the soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I had it on my bookcase probably for 2 years before I opened it. And uh, my wife and I went to Rwanda for 7 months and we took that book with us. And we read each paragraph back and forth to each other. And then when we returned, we joined a group. And I'm now with another group online, just going through it all over again because it's so rich and has so much wisdom in it. Okay, let's talk about your book a little bit. uh,
Okay.
So this is Wisdom from the Spirit World. And I have to tell you that my process in digesting this book is to read a little every day, but not read too much in a day, because what I found is that the wisdom that you provide and the examples that you provide to support your point of view is something that I like to sit with and be able to ruminate over, and before I tackle the next concept and the next example that you give. But that's just my process. I just didn't want to, read too much through and then get the stories jumbled or your points jumbled. And it really helps me just take my time with it. I must say that I do highly recommend it. It's full of wisdom, and the way that you support your points are just so concrete. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you mentioned Lilydale, and I've been to Lilydale a couple times. So could you talk me through your relationship with Lilydale and how that started, and what your current relationship is?
Well, it started many years ago, even before I was doing professional readings for people. So well over 30 years ago, I went up there and took a lot of training and would go to the outdoor message services. For those who don't know, Lilydale is a spiritualist community, spiritualism being recognized as a religion. So I would go to these outdoor message services in which they're about an hour long. The mediums, resident mediums of Lilydale, but also visiting mediums from all over the place, actually, would give messages to the audience members, loved ones in the spirit world. And so I would attend those, and there was this burning desire within me that I want to do that. I feel drawn. I feel called onto that pathway to stand up and give that sort of evidence and comfort, importantly, to others. And I really believe I'm of the school that mediums are born, not made. Although you can have, it's sort of, I use the analogy of, I love music. And from the time I was a little girl, I loved music. I used to play 45, I'm dating myself, 45 records. I would love to be a musician. Am I ever going to do that in my lifetime? No, probably not. I could probably play chopsticks on the piano. I would love to be a concert pianist, but that ain't happening. So I'm using that analogy to say that certainly everybody can receive intuition. And that's why I teach it, because it's within every individual through their own inner senses, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. But is everybody going to be called to be a medium? The answer to that, I believe, is no. Because of my study, my own personal study of these things called blueprints, meaning what was set up or what was planned or intended by the soul before physical incarnation. So I'm saying all of that to say that Lilydale gave me a very good foundation in spiritualism. I took many workshops up there. And then I began to teach at Lilydale. And I taught there many times. And I am still teaching there, only it's through Zoom. They're called off-season classes. They run from September to, I think, through May until the
And
end.
what is it that you teach?
Well, I've taught a number of things. This what recently what I've taught earlier this year are specifics of mediumship development for practicing mediums, how to surrender, how to deepen receptivity, how to follow the story of the spirit communicator. Because this is a skill. I never call it a gift. You will never hear me refer to it as a gift. I do not believe in gifts. I believe everything that we have, we've earned in some way or had previous experience with. It's a process of refinement. So because I've done it many years, um, I've learned a lot. And so that's usually what I teach is the specifics or the mechanics of refining mediumship.
Okay. So I'm curious, having visited Lilydale a number of times, and I'm always fascinated by the houses up there and the different colors of each of the houses and how bright and cheerful they are. Have you ever stayed up there, or do you just travel back and forth based on what you're doing at the time?
No, I've stayed there and I get very little sleep. That's one of the reasons I don't go in person anymore. Um, the place is super, super charged, and um, I have seen everything from Abraham Lincoln, who actually had some spiritualism. His wife, Mary Todd, had spiritualism or seances in the White House. I've seen everything from Abraham Lincoln to Native Americans, canoeing on the lakes up there, to Victorian ladies standing with their parasols, Civil War soldiers when I was standing at the stump giving messages, which is a huge vortex. The stump, it's called the stump. It's an old tree stump.
Yeah.
And the medium stands in front of that. And it is, I have never, out of all the places I've stood up in front of groups and given messages, there's no place like that stump. And I mean that it is a vortex. When I stood up there looking back, and there's benches that the audience sits on, and the place was packed, usually gets packed, and every seat is taken. Sometimes people stand. When I looked out clairvoyantly, I was seeing all of those things that I just named, behind the physical people there.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it is a vortex that spirits can go in and out of quite easily. I have not been in a place like that. It's supercharged.
Well, I appreciate that explanation because when I've been at Lilydale and you get a program as to what's going on during the day, there's always something going on, quote, at the stump at a particular hour. And I always wondered, well, who cares about going to this stump? Now I get the point of what the stump is all about. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you attended Delphi and took courses there in mediumship, correct?
Yes.
And so is there a certification or a degree, or if
Yes.
if I
I
felt
have a
called to do mediumship work, what would happen if I went there? What's the curriculum like?
Well, I believe everything. So it's changed over the years. This was many years ago that I went in the mid to late '90s, and I went twice. It's called in-depth channeling. That's the basic course. I personally don't like that word channeling. It's been misused. It's overused. But that's the name of their course. They might have changed it now, but everybody has to take that, and it's about a week. And you stay there on grounds. They have beautiful facilities, and you're going from morning till night. 10 o'clock at night, with breaks in between for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and it's intensive. And you open very, very quickly. And I went, and not being able to, or not believing, I guess, I was able to give a reading to a stranger. And 7 days later, in order to graduate, I had to, they would bring the public in. People just, they would place an ad in the paper so that they could get volunteers, for the student mediums. And so I had to give 3 readings to complete strangers there. And when I left 7 days later from Delphi, and I actually write about this process in my books, I could do a reading for a complete stranger. I'll never forget this lady, wonderful woman. And the impressions started coming to me basically through clairsentience, which is sensing. Um, and when I came out of that room after doing those readings, I was ecstatic. I remember yelling and going, "I did it! I did it!" Um, I really, really was genuinely surprised that I was able to sit with complete strangers, the strangers in this case, and tell them things about themselves. Now, in those days, the mediumship portal hadn't opened yet. It was basically more of a psychic type reading. And so mediumship actually opened through, interestingly, through my use of the tarot, the 78 card deck of the tarot. And I would be, doing spreads for people. And all of a sudden I would look at a card, and I started sensing something about spirit loved ones with that recipient of that reading. And so that, the process opened up through these other means. And that's how spirit really operates. It takes the path of least resistance, and where we're really going to be able to have a breakthrough. That was my particular breakthrough. I've read other mediums, some of the famous mediums, stories, like, for example, John Edward. He also started with the tarot, and when he'd be reading the tarot, he would start to get these impressions of, souls in spirit that were coming through.
Okay. So, were I to say, all right, Carole, I would love to get a reading from you. Is there a preparation that you would want to take me through first, or would I come to you with a list of questions? Or would I say, here's a very specific person who passed who I would like you to contact? How do you do this?
Never. I never ask anything. In fact, I had to put on my website, please do not tell me anything when you, I run my whole business myself. I run the entire thing. I, manage my own website. I do everything. I have no assistance whatsoever. So I had to put on my website, please do not give me information when when you call me to make the appointment. Because the less I know, the better. And I'm talking about in my conscious mind. So I do
Uh-huh.
not ask who you want to connect with beforehand. Um, I surrender. And the process of surrender means that spirit will blend with me. There's a phenomenon called blending. And in that blending process, my soul is blending with the soul of the spirit communicator. That's how it happens. Otherwise, it would not be possible. So, in preparation for the session, I asked people, and this is on my website, soulvisions.net as well, the preparation for a session. Um, Please have some questions written. I don't ask those beforehand, they usually come through organically. And secondly, it's an absolute must to engage in stillness, quiet, meditation, mindfulness, prayer, something that is going to elevate the energy of that recipient. Because the energy that is brought to a session will affect it. And I have actually done readings where the person is going, well, I'm driving, and said, no, we can't do a reading when you're driving. I need your full attention. Well, I just came home and I'm all frantic. That's going to reflect in the reading. And it really does not make for a good reading. It's not my fault. It's not the spirit world's fault. Um, People must prepare just like you prepare for anything else. And that means just relaxing, maybe focusing on your breath through mindfulness, being still. That is the best way to get a very good reading. And it is a triangle. At the top of that, at the apex, is the spirit world. At the base of that pyramid, on one end is the recipient of the reading. On the other end is the medium. The connecting lines are the lines of communication and the lines of energy. And this is a highly energetic process. So it is necessary to prepare. That's why, I've done many, many, many podcasts, and I always ask the host, please do not, spontaneously just ask me to do a reading when we're in the middle of an interview, because I do my own preparation. I do a very brief meditation beforehand, and I communicate with the spirit world, and I surrender to the spirit world, because the truth is, at this point, I trust the process immensely. I
Yeah.
trust the process.
Now, you're also a Reiki master, and as am I. Uh, and I've known Reiki masters who, I know you don't like the word channel, but who bring in information from the spirit world during a Reiki session. And do you find that that's often the case for you?
Not often, because I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on being the conduit. And by the way, I still do Reiki. Most useful energy I ever studied. I highly recommend it. You can use it on yourself. You can use it on animals, plants, and of course others. Um, Many years ago, I was highly trained in the center I mentioned earlier at the beginning of our interview with spiritual healing. And um, I would often get messages for people then, and I would pass them along. I don't do that so much now because that's really not my focus. I want to be as pure for spirit as I can, even doing something with hands on. So I'm just focused on being still and not questioning anything. The less I question, the better.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a surrendering and trust. You know what the most common obstacle is, Bob, when
What's
people are
that?
being trained in mediumship? Trust.
Oh,
People
sure.
doubt what they're feeling. They doubt what they're hearing, from spirit. Um, that is the most common obstacle that people have to surmount. And I will
Yeah.
tell you, it takes many, many years to become a confident medium.
Yeah.
You cannot take a weekend workshop or 2 weekend workshops or three. You have to sit for many years, either in development or I did not have the luxury of a development circle. I wish I would have. My training has come through direct experience in sessions with people. Um, but I really do. If you have the opportunity and you want to develop and you're called to this pathway, I strongly recommend creating a development circle. And, that's a whole another ball game that I'm not going to take up time with. How do I do that? There's many ways you can find out about how to create a development circle.
Yeah.
But it is part of the process of um, making a connection and a bond with your spirit team, meaning those souls. Some people call them spirit guides. I call them a spirit team. Um, Making an attunement with them. There has to be an energetic attunement with those particular souls who help, and being able to raise your frequency to be able to meet the spirit world in the medium. That's why it's called mediumship, because the medium has to elevate their consciousness. The spirit world has to lower their consciousness in order to blend with the medium.
Yeah. So there's when I think about Reiki, I think about being a channel of energy that flows through me uh, and goes goes to the person I'm doing Reiki on. And when I do Reiki, I feel energized by that energy that goes through me. I've heard mediums tell me that they find mediumship exhausting, that as a process, it takes a lot out of them when they engage in it. So I was wondering about your experience and the difference for you between doing Reiki versus doing mediumship.
I know my limits with mediumship, and I am not and I will never be an assembly line medium. Meaning, I'm sitting here for 5, 6 hours a day doing readings. No. I would far rather give quality than quantity,
Yeah,
because I employ an extreme integrity. This is a sacred skill from from God, and I treat it as such. It is a blessing and an honor, and to me, a privilege to be the conduit, the communicating bridge for people in need of healing. Therefore, I employ very high ethics. Um, and I will tell you that anyone who is not in alignment with ethics and these things called natural laws, who is practicing mediumship, I've seen people fall who are not in alignment with that integrity. So it's really important to stay in that alignment. And it when I do group mediumship, most of the time the maximum I will do is 2 hours. I don't know anyone, even famous mediums who do more than 2 hours. It uses some of the energy, the etheric energy. And for those who don't know, the etheric it's a body double. It's an energetic body that closely resembles or is a duplicate actually of the physical body. And when we're developing, in gestation, that etheric body is formed and it's a template. So actually, mediumship will use some of the vital force of the medium. Also, the recipients. Now, and not to the point of being drained, absolutely not. And we talked about Edgar Casey for a minute. Casey was doing something totally different, a different type of mediumship, and that was trance. Casey was actually his consciousness was leaving his body. And there was his spirit people coming in. John, I believe, was one of them who actually spoke in biblical terms, because a lot of Casey's readings are in Old English. I mean, some of the language used is difficult to understand. That's a different type of mediumship than most mediums today are doing. Physical mediumship is extremely rigorous. There are those types of mediums are few and far between, and I would be very suspect of anyone who is claiming to do that, who has not had a lot of training to be able to do it. And actually, Casey burned out because he was told to only do so many per day. I think it was, I don't know, 3 or 4, and he was doing like 7 or 8. And he actually burned out, and that is possible to burn out. So I'm very careful with preserving my own energy, and that's why I said I know my limits. At the end of a 2-hour program, I feel my consciousness highly elevated, but I also feel a sort of fatigue that will come on. And I actually will get certain sensations in my body that's saying it's time to stop. And people who try to press and go on, recipients, I have very strong boundaries. So because people will come up afterwards if I'm signing books, and they'll say, well, can you tell me, like, is my mom here or whatever? And I always tell people, when I close, I'm done. I close that door. With the third eye, the brow chakra, I pull the shade down with that, because it is indeed possible to get drained. Yeah, you can get very ill.
And well, when you told me that you had done 15,000 readings, I thought, okay, she's going to look pretty drained, but you look pretty good. So I was curious about that energy exchange and how you deal with it.
Well, I've been asked that before. So it's a great question. But actually, mediumship, I am so incredibly grateful that I have chosen this pathway and that Spirit chose me. We have that agreement. I love my work. I love it. I hear people when they go, oh, I can't wait to retire, and I can't wait to get out of this place I'm in. And I'm like, I don't want to retire. I love connecting people with their relatives, with their pets. There's been many readings I've done. Pets have come through. It always makes me kind of tear up when that happens, because I have such a huge heart for animals. I've done charity work with mediumship programs for animals, but I absolutely cherish the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings up a question about, even though you may close that third eye, do you ever get some spirits knocking on your door saying, I've got a message, I need you to get this out?
Um, yes, not in those words. But there have been multiple times. This is not on a regular basis. I'm very genuine and transparent in any interview and in all my books for what I have personally experienced. That's all I ever talk about. The truth is, I've had many instances in which complete strangers in the spirit world, I have no idea who they are, will come to me prior to a reading or prior to a group. I have actually sat with a piece of paper before I've done a group and not knowing a soul that's going to be at that group. And I will sit there in the afternoon if the group's in the evening and say, is there someone from the spirit world that is a loved one of an attendee this evening who would like to come through to me now? And I wanted to sharpen my trust. And that's why I'm always stretching. I always want to stretch. So, um, give you an example. This is really cool. I did that one, more, many, well, several times, at least several times in the past several years. And um, so I did that. And on the way to this group, and there was probably about 60 people at this group, there was a gentleman that came through from the spirit world. I was driving my car. This was not with the paper, but I was driving my car. And all of a sudden, I heard this and I got some numbers associated with this gentleman. And he said he was from New York and he was somehow involved with 911. I'm like, okay, all right. I had a little pad of paper in my glove box. I pulled that out and I jotted down the numbers. I go to the event and I did about 3/4 of the program. And then I went to my purse and I took out this piece of paper and I said, I was on my way here tonight and this gentleman in the spirit world came to me and I read off the paper and I gave the number. And a woman there raises her hand and she goes, oh, there was a name too. There was a name with it because in my readings, there are always names. And she goes, that's my cousin. He was a firefighter in 911 and he died. And that number that you gave was the number of the station.
Uh,
I about fell off my stool in front of this group. And so it's astonishing to me that how hard the spirit world works to be able to get through and to get a message. And he just wanted to tell her, basically, I think it was like, thanks for praying for me. I'm fine. I'm alive in spirit. And, there was no earth shattering message, but he had passed in such a tragic manner. And he saw this as his opportunity. So that
yeah.
has happened a number of times. Also, when I go to sleep at night, I always have headsets on. I do a little meditation, very brief, before I go to sleep. And I have no clue who they are come through, but I see them clairvoyantly. And then there's some sort of information or distinguishing characteristic of that spirit. And um, the next day, it's most likely I've had that happen. It's somebody I'm going to connect with in a reading. It I'll be honest. I mean, there was times when I myself was very skeptical, and I thought, "Am I really doing this? Is this really real?" But when those sorts of things would happen, like I just relayed to you, that's when I knew there's something to this.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about uh, human spirits coming through. Have you ever had animal spirits come through uh, to give consolation to people who have lost their pets?
Oh yes. Yeah, now I do not tout myself as an animal communicator. I make that very clear. I've specialized in human mediumship. However, I have studied animal communication, and it's a bit different because I'll tell you why. Animals do not have language. They mainly communicate through pictures, clairvoyance. And so, in multiple readings, I couldn't even give you a number, there's been so many. They will appear with someone that they knew or loved in the spirit world. Dogs, cats, horses, turtles, birds.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a goat one time that came through. I mean, that was a lot of years ago. These are all true stories, but absolutely. And again, I'm so sentimental about animals. Um, I would actually probably consider myself sort of an animal activist. I am vegan, and it's important to me to speak for those who have no voice. Um, anyway, so they communicate love. The bond of love is indestructible. It's indestructible because that is what God is love, and God is indestructible. So each living being, each sentient being has the God energy within them. And because of that, the soul is eternal.
Yeah. Okay. At this point in every podcast, I ask the guest to leave our audience with some words of wisdom. This book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, is obviously full of words of wisdom. And you might want to say something about your current book. How did that come about? And
Yeah, the new book that's coming out, and I mean it's been completed for quite some time. It's called The Art of Sensing. It is available right now on Amazon for pre-order. It will not be out until late April of 2025. I wanted to offer some type of, I don't know what even to say, wisdom, words of guidance on how to follow the voice of spirit within you. The ordinary person, you don't have to be a medium for this, or anybody spectacular, um, through times of difficulty. Now, we are in this hugely chaotic time currently, and transformational time. Um, but there is also, I mean, the nature of life is difficulties. I mean, it's for anybody going through the loss of a loved one, a divorce, the loss of a job, a very serious illness like cancer or heart disease or stroke. How can I tap into the resource within myself to navigate more successfully and more smoothly through times of chaos, through times of difficulty, through times of suffering? That's what this new book, The Art of Sensing, focuses on. And there are also exercises in it to help people. And I also speak about these things called soul pods. The other word for pods are groups. And those are souls who share a very similar consciousness or ray. I call them rays as well. Other teachers have called them rays. For example, the group of healers, and I break them down in the book. What are the characteristics of these particular soul pods? Because the most common question I've been asked in 15,000 readings, besides offering evidentiary mediumship, is what is my purpose? That is the most common question. And to help people navigate, just offering a signpost for people, because a good teacher does not have answers. A good teacher simply goes, you might want to go that way or that way.
Yeah.
Or, this way. That's what a good ethical teacher does. People need to know that if listening to that voice within, that still small voice of intuition, that is the compass that points them in the right direction to their soul's fulfillment, to a peaceful pathway, to going through life much more smoothly. Certainly take one look around and you can see the world is in need of a lot of healing.
Yeah. Okay.
This was my personal, there's probably going to be another one. I've been given the call to write another book. I mean, intuitively given the call. Because these times are so highly transformative. But this was my initial offering. And it's simply written. All my books are pretty simply written to help people understand, this is not a complex process to go through. The simpler, the better. We tend to, as human beings, we tend to rationalize, we tend to complicate things far beyond what they need to be. And so what I've discovered is keep it simple and keep it real. And as far as spiritual practice, do it on a daily basis, vary it. One of the things I talk about in the book too is go out in nature. Nature is a purity of God. It doesn't have a brain that goes, well, I'm going to worry about yesterday or I'm going to worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anxiety. It doesn't have depression. It simply is. So nature is available to everybody. It doesn't cost any money. It is a very potent healing tool.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Well, yeah, just expanding just a couple of sentences upon what I just said about using nature. Practicing quiet. People have become addicted to being busy. That's a choice. That's a choice to be constantly busy. And we've forgotten to be still. And in stillness, and I know this sounds like you hear so much of this, in our spiritual community, but even if you're 5 minutes a day or maybe, 5 in the morning, 5 in the evening, to just sit, close your eyes quietly. This is not complicated. Focus on your breath, which stops the treadmill of the rational mind. And just relish that. And make it a daily practice. That's more important now than ever, because I have found myself immersed in the chaos on social media. I think our buttons get pushed very easily now. And, this is a way, again, these things are available to anybody. A child can do these things. Just sitting still, closing your eyes. Don't do it when you're driving. And focusing on your breath.
Yeah.
You know what it does, Bob? It's a reset.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, if you do that, even 3 minutes, you open your eyes again, and it will feel like maybe even like you've gotten up in the morning, like, oh, okay, it's a new day. And that's what I felt,
Yeah.
to, really reset from where we were at. And it can be done, and it can be done quite simply.
Okay, well, audience, as always, take what you've heard and put into practice what resonates with you now. Put the rest on a shelf and pull it down when you're ready for it. I will have a link to Carole's website from our website at yourspiritualjourneypodcast.com. So until next time, this has been Your Spiritual Journey.